Well, 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 the bell has rung and summer has sprung, and you know what that means. It's time for the Camp Shioka podcast, season 4, baby. This is your host, Josh Stream. I will be hanging out with you guys all summer, and kicking off the Camp Shioka podcast, a very special guest, Zachariah Stein.
What's up?
Hello, hello, hello. You've been here for how long?
This is my 6th summer.
6th summer here, and
Yes.
we've known each other for about three weeks.
Just about 3 weeks. Yep. Gosh, that's wild.
Yeah, right? It feels like we've known each other for a good while. I mean, we are brothers after all.
That's true.
Brothers
That's true.
in Christ.
Yep. Oh, absolutely.
So, as much as I'd love to sit and chat, I do have questions, and they won't put a damper on the energy that we already have going on. So, the first question for me and for our listeners: hometown, college major, role at camp. You got it.
Hometown, Somerset, Kentucky.
Okay.
South Central Kentucky. You won't find it on a map unless you're really looking.
Okay.
Used to be small town, kind of growing now. Just depends on who you ask.
Yeah.
I did college for a year, did ministry, loved it, and then God was like, hey, time to move on. And then COVID hit, and I started working full-time with my dad doing remodel, and that was a lot of fun. So I did that the last 4 years, and just recently moved to West Monroe and looking for the next thing. So whether that's school or a job opening somewhere, not 100% sure yet, but
Yeah.
here for the summer. That's all that matters for
Yep.
now.
I get you. The next 2 or 3 months.
Yeah.
Have you? It's been like fairly evident when God wants you to be like, all right, stop. Like, you're doing something.
Oh
else now.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it was actually here because I was at college before. The 1 year I was at college was before my first summer. So 2018 to 2019, that year I was in college. Then my first summer here, it was like the end of summer. And I was really praying about it, and God was like, "No, don't." And I was like, "Wow, okay."
Yeah.
And then since then, the most clear yes has always been go back to camp. So for the last 6
Gotcha.
summers, 2 summers ago, I told the directors, I was like, "I'm not coming back." It's like, this was it. That was the last one.
Yep.
And then the following January, it was like late January, early February, I came down, visited some friends down here, and the directors had reached out again. I was like, hey, I'm going to be in town. Let's sit and talk at least,
Yeah.
and maybe I'll come back. And they were like, yeah, no, here's what we're going to offer you this year, which leads into the last question you asked me was like, what's my role? And that was so I was before last summer, so January, February of 23. And they were like, hey, here's what we can offer you, activities / anything else that we can kind of like throw into your lap just to kind of like let you do. And so the last summer, and then I was on activities team, which meant in charge of all the games, the fun things, our theme nights, hosting like skit night, things like that. All the other responsibilities just kind of tack on to it. Like whenever we do different rotations and things, it's like, okay, making sure that's set up, or in the high school weeks where there's not like rotations, but making sure that the schedule is followed, that the activities are being done in the role, in the position that they're supposed to. And so doing that the last summer a lot, that was full time last summer, that in production. I do a lot of production as well here. And then this summer coming in, I was the only person returning from the team from last summer, so they just gave me activities lead as well. So I'm kind of in charge of my little team of 3, where we do all the things: Survivor Day, rotations for the juniors, planning and executing the electives with the help of counselors, and making sure the schedule stays on track as best as possible.
Yeah, right. As much as you can. It is camp, so like there's always
stay flexible.
Right. That's so funny. So what was the hiring process initially like? Because you had kind of delved into it a little bit, but I know we talked off camera about like your very first
very first interview. It cracks me up that I've only ever technically had one interview, but this is yet my 6th summer. It's just because they're just like, oh yeah, you're coming back, right? I'm like, oh yeah, sure. And then like we just text and like call about it. There's no like official. But the very first one was a set interview. So for like any new people wanting to apply to camp, it's just a simple like questionnaire. They ask you simple questions. You write, I think, like 3 little short essays as well, just about like what is who is Jesus to you, not what, who is Jesus to you, a little bit of your story, and then usually something along the lines of, I'm trying to remember that last one is, I think, like what you're passionate about, things like that. I think that's that last one.
I think so.
If that's not there, then they will directly ask you that in your interview. You fill that out, and then they reach out to you. The directors get all that. They get the application. They reach out to you, and they go, hey, when's a good time for you to sit down for a phone call? I think mine was about 20-ish minutes, if I remember correctly. Do you remember how long yours was?
Mine was, I think, they had a lot of questions for me specifically because I'm from
Yeah.
Wisconsin, and they,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know, I'm not a college student. I wasn't a college student at the time, and so yeah, mine was about that time, maybe like 35 minutes, a little longer. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
And so that probably that rough 20 to 35 minutes is probably about how
Yeah.
long it is. And you sit down, you're on the phone, just a phone call with the directors,
Yep.
John Luke, Miss Carrie, Two Mama. And some are in all of them. Sometimes you don't have all three of them. It just depends on if they can all get together.
Yeah.
Most of the time, you'll have all three. And so they just sat there and they just asked me questions. We went over my application a little bit. Hey, we saw that you're an athlete, that you like sports. Like, are you passionate about that? And then that first summer, they were like, hey, do you want to help us with tournaments? And since then, I've like ran the tournaments. And so, not that I love it too. I love doing it. And so, but they just noticed, they're like, oh, we can pull that out of you and let you run that and different things, which is how I ended up on activities as well. Started doing tournaments, and they were like, can you help us with this? And then, can you help us with this as well? And then going to 23, that was like, y'all, I can't do both.
Yeah, right.
And so like, okay, activities. So there's that. They asked me to share about my testimony a little bit as well, just like who I was and how I came to know Christ, and then also where I am today and with Christ. And then family a little bit. Two Mama only had one question for me that cracked me up. She was like, do you have social media? And I was like, yes.
Do you know what that is?
And she was like, what's your username? And I gave it to her. And then like 5 minutes after my interview, she had requested to follow me. And I was like, what in the world? I was like, I guess they want to see like who I am like on social media stuff. I'm not a very big person. She follows me on Instagram, but like I think the last post I had was almost a year ago.
That's so
I'm just
funny.
not big. I don't post a whole lot. I like to get on and see what everybody else does.
Yeah.
But Two Mama like followed me, and I was like, I didn't know who she was at the moment. And so I was like, cool, she's a director. She wants to follow me, see like who I am. And I got to camp. I'm like, oh no, you're just everybody's grandma. You just want to follow people because you love them.
Yeah.
I'm like, you're like, oh yeah. And so that was really it. And just kind of fun, just super chill, honestly. And then for me, my interview was in the fall, and then I heard in, I think, early January. So I think it was like October to early January. So I had a 2-month wait. But I was also I figured out later, I was one of the first interviews as well. Like I was towards the beginning of the pack.
Yeah.
And so now I know there's some people that don't interview till later and then hear like 2 weeks later, like super quick, versus, and there's other people I've talked to who's like, yeah, no, I interviewed and I didn't hear anything for months. But it's because they're still, I mean, they're all three of them also have other jobs. And so they're all, when they can get together and sit down and talk about it, they do, but they all also work part-time somewhere else as well. And so it's just, it takes longer for them to do it, which is, I mean, it's camp. And, you know, they take their time with some things. And that's just one of the things they're very particular about as well, is they pray about it very well. And when they, like the staff they hire, man, like the last few years especially has been like 100% God going, this is who you need to pick. And this is like, and we get to camp, it's like, it fulfills every single thing that we need. Anytime we're like, man, wish we had somebody like that. It's like, I do that.
Yeah.
And it's like, where did you come from? And they're like, I've done it the entire time. You just never specifically asked. And so it's been really good. And especially I know talking to some of the newer staff, like with especially this year, like even our veterans this year have a slightly different hiring process than what I had. And it's even morphed even more to be better for even our new staff this year. I've talked to a few. Yeah. And it's even still like a little bit different to where it's like, oh, we have more specific questions, better things to ask.
Just really honing that search for employees. Yeah. What did you do? Like, what were your thoughts and feelings in the time in between like your interview and then like, hey, you know, come on board? Like, what was that like?
Yeah. Well, I interviewed, I didn't even hear about camp actually. My brother did, Nathaniel. And so he heard about camp, and from there, he even talked to John Luke. It was when Sadie was doing her like little tour back in fall of 2018, when it was a lot smaller of Live Original. So they went to my hometown, and then Nathaniel, my older brother, went to it, went backstage, got to meet them all, and that was right before John Luke became executive director. He was activities director, transitioning to executive director, and Nathaniel and John Luke struck up conversation, and they were like, he was like, you're a pretty cool guy. You should go online and apply to my summer camp. I'm going to be taking over this summer. And then I didn't go. And 2 weeks later, I just get a text of the link. And Nathaniel was like, hey, apply. We're going to go both do this. I was like, okay. And it's like, I had no idea about anything. I looked at the website and like talked to Nathaniel, was like, what did you talk to John Luke about? And he was like, I don't know. It was like a 5-minute conversation. And I was like, so no information, nothing. He was like, no, not really. I just think it'd be a fun opportunity. And so like that in between, I was like, okay, like, if I hear from them, I hear from them. If I don't, I don't. Like, I wasn't that worried. I was like, that'd be super fun. I was also in school, so finals and everything. Yeah. And so when I got home, though, I got the call when I was home on winter break. So that time, I was like, was like, okay, I was like, I really want to hear from them. I'm like, this seems like really fun. Because I was living at school and Nathaniel was living at home going to community college, so we're like an hour and a half away. But then we were like with each other for like a month, and we were both like talking about it, like really excited, like, man, we really hope we both get to do it. And it cracks me up. They called Nathaniel first to tell him that he was hired. He didn't answer, and I got the phone call like 5 minutes later, and I answered, and they were like, oh yeah, like you're hired, we just wanted to let you know. And they're like, we don't, like, Nathaniel didn't answer, but like if you see him, you can let him know. And they hung up, and I was at home, and I immediately like ran and found Nathaniel. I'm like, I don't remember where. I think he may have been in his bedroom or something. And I like banged on the door, and I was like, Nathaniel, did you miss their phone call? I'm like, you're like, what? I'm like, they just tried to call you, dude. And I was like, they called me next. I'm like, and then I was like, he opened the door, and I was like, we're both just got hired. We both like freaked out, like had so much, and we're like super excited. And so it was weird because it was like that. It was a solid length of time. It's like the first like month, I was kind of like, am I going to hear from them? Am I not? I feel like this is a solid time. And then we were talking about it, and I was like, okay, maybe they're just, still interviewing, still processing. And then I did find out it was like, they were interviewing people all through that time. It wasn't just, oh, we're going to take 2 months to pray about it. It was like, hey, we're going to take this time and like interview other people as well. You're just at the beginning of the group. So
yeah, I get you. You're ahead of the pack. So for people that are like aspiring to come work at Camp Shioka, like what advice would you give to like aspiring future staff?
If you don't like the outside and you don't like the heat, don't come.
Yeah, right.
It's hot. It's humid. We're in like 95-degree weather majority of the time. It hits up like 105 with the humidity. It's hot out here through all of late June and early July.
Oh yeah.
And we're out here for 8 to 10 weeks, depending on what position you're hired for. You're out here extra couple weeks sometimes for the more team positions like media activities, worship, and so we're out here for a little bit longer. But also, like, if you do have a heart for kids of any age, then I like highly encourage, honestly. If you're like, oh, I just want to go work at a summer camp, it's fun, then it's like, no, it's just fun. But if you don't like kids, it's kind of difficult. There's been a few where it's like, man, like I just thought I'd come out and just work, but I didn't realize like how much like dealing with kids is difficult. So like a lot of people who are like already invested in kids in a way, like whether it means you serve in kids church, the nursery, or you work at a daycare. I know if you have done that, or you serve in your youth group locally, or you have a heart and a passion for that age, then I highly encourage you to come, because that's what a lot of people have found out. Oh, I really do like this, and this is something I would like to encourage myself in and continue to pursue that. Versus some people come out and they're like, yeah, I have a heart and passion for it. And then some they're like, dude, I'm dragging. Like that was difficult. And then like it makes them not rethink, but it goes, okay, how can I like be better? Like it's like I still have that heart and passion, but like now I'm dragging. I just dealt with kids for 10 weeks. Like it's difficult.
Yeah.
And then they get to turn it around and go, okay, now I know how to take this home. I know how to do this. And so if you're like, like I like kids, I enjoy kids, I enjoy serving my youth, I don't know if this is the right step, this will help so much. I know it helped me. Like I was serving in my youth group at the time, and I did for years later as well before I moved. And coming down, like every time I'd go back home at the end of the summer, I'd be like, man, I have like so many new things, like so much I could take down there, or things I'd learned over the year. I'd be able to like turn around and come down and be the counselor and be like, oh my gosh, I've learned all this stuff to these people. So there's that, as well as the teaching and learning down here at the same time. Like we're teaching kids, but we're also like getting poured into ourselves. Like the amount of times I've been down here, I'm like, man, like morning Bible was just like that hit me. Like I was like, I needed to hear that one, and it's like, oh,
yeah, a little gut check.
Yeah, but it's good. It's nothing. It's never anything bad. It's like that was a healthy thing that I need to be told. And they also highly encourage middle school and high school. They encourage your alone time with God. We set aside Sela time, which is meant, it's in a group setting, like boys in one section, girls in another, but it's meant as your like individual one-on-one time with God, in like a quiet time where you read your Bible. Like usually provide questions or like little discussion things to talk about at a later point as well. But it's like, here's a scripture for you to read, or you read your own scripture as well. Like I've done that where I've like taken the time and been like, man, it was just a rough day yesterday. So the next morning I'm like, I didn't get time to wake up by myself. I've had no alone time, and I take that time for myself. And so that getting poured into that way, where they encourage us to do that, and then taking that home and being like, y'all need to do this, like especially as like a youth leader, and being like, trust me. It's like I did it all summer where it was like I needed my alone time with God, and it was like going home and being able to highly encourage, be like, hey, this is like things that I've been doing for the last 2 months. Like it could just be games, it could be the spiritual side where it's like that alone time, or even like a new lesson and a whole new topic. And like I just learned about this whole new topic the entire summer, and I can go home and teach it to any age, because we do all ages out here as well, and it's all usually the same central theme. And so it's really fun to go home and like invest into whoever it is that I'm with in a day-to-day with things I learned here at camp. So all aspiring staff, it's like, come expectant to learn as well. If like, if that's like your heart is like, oh, I love these kids, it's like, yeah, you're gonna come and teach them and love on them, but like you're gonna get poured into. Like, don't just like come with like the like I'll do everything. Like, you're gonna get poured into a lot out here, and it's awesome.
Everybody gets poured into here at Camp Shioka.
It's true.
You had mentioned activities coordinator. So as you had stepped into that new role, what have been some challenges that you've noticed, or that the Lord has just put in front of you to like teach you something?
Coming in, like I said earlier, I'm the only one returning from my team, but also I'm the only, like the other 2 people on my team are brand new this year. And so it was like, hey, you know what you're doing, but now you have to teach them so that if you're not right there, they can do it. And I'm like, what? And it was like, oh, okay. Like I can't. Last summer, the 2 people I worked with had both, one of them had been on activities for 2 years previously as well. And the other one had worked as a counselor for half the summer, and then activities the second half of the summer. And that was in 21. And then in 22, she wasn't here. But when she came into 23, they're like, you did such a good job the second half of 21 as activities. We're just going to put you full-time activities. Wow. And so for the 3 of us to step in, it was like the dream team of like 3 already veteran people stepping into activities, and we ran the show. And it was super easy. We all knew what we were doing. It was like, hey, what do we want to plan for this? Oh, well, here's my years of experience. This is something we've noticed works. This is something we noticed hasn't worked, and just everything like that. So coming into this summer, it's like, okay, here's new people. Like I have to teach them the things, and then be like, all right, yes, this idea will work, or no, this idea won't work, because that just doesn't fit the not solid mold, but like the flexible mold that camp has. Like, yes, like we're open to new ideas and we want to do new things, but at the same time, there's like, oh, that's a great idea, but it doesn't fit exactly into what we're trying to execute. And especially, and I open it to all staff as well. I'm like, hey, what do we think works and doesn't work in these situations, in these areas? And it's fun to hear the ideas, and then I've had to pickpocket like what I want and don't want. I got so many, when we sat down in staff training, and we literally sat for 30 minutes and they just hit me, all the entire staff just, hey, here's a game I've played, here's a game I've played, here's an activity I've done. And since then, like I wrote them all down, and then I went through them, and I was like, this will work, this won't work, this will work, this won't, this will, and just back and forth with trying to figure out how to implement it. But also there's times where it's just like, man, like that's so fun, but just not something we can do here. But then being the one to do that and make those calls, and then it goes to the directors, of course, but like it goes from them to me, and then I bring it to directors. Hey, here's the plan I came up with, help me execute it. And then they help me execute it. And so there's a little bit of push and pull in there, where it's like, I'm pulling from you and I'm trying to push it forward, but I need the director's backup. But so it has to go through me, up to them, back down to me, back out to you, and then we can do it to the kids. And so that's probably been one of the biggest challenges, trying to do all of that with the new team as well. Because last summer, again, there was the 3 of us that had been doing it for years. So I was like, oh yeah, we can pull those ideas and we can make it work super easy. But now it's like, okay, now you need to understand what the heart is behind this. And then we can come up with the idea, with the ideas of like, okay, this will and won't work. And so, not that it's been super difficult, but it's been wasn't what I was expecting. That's what like coming in, I was like, oh yeah, like I can do this easy. And then I came and I was like, you two were like, neither of them to my knowledge have worked at a summer camp. Both of them, I'm pretty sure, have gone to summer camps, but I don't think either of them, I'm positive neither of them have worked at summer camps. So like flipping that transition was a little interesting as well, going, you're now behind the scenes of everything. We're very rarely on the front face during the day, but like at night during our activities and things, we're the front face. But then we spend all day in the back doing everything in preparation. And so it's like, oh man, like There's one day I was like, I think I've sat for like 4 or 5 hours and not seen a single kid. But then like that night, it was like that 2 hours of games was like the most fun thing I've done like in 3 days. Like that was so much fun, so much hype.
Yeah.
And so having to even teach that a little bit. So those two things are probably the two things where it's like, now that I'm lead and coordinator lead, those two, kind of figuring out how to balance those as well. Cause I'm like, oh yeah, last summer we could plan it in 30 minutes because we could just do it, versus this summer it's like, okay, now we have to sit down as a team, figure it out. As summer goes, it's gotten easier to be like, oh yeah, that's the heart, that's the passion. But at the beginning, like the first week, it was a little weird trying to figure it all out. And then this week, as the week's gone, because we're only in the second week of camp right now, and so it's like, and we have 5 more, and so it's like, okay, now we're like finding our traction. We're like, here's what we can do. And so, but it was a struggle. I mean, we've been at it for 3 weeks now with my team as well, and so it's taken all of this time to finally get that traction going. And it was not what I was expecting, but I'm not upset about it either. I mean, I'm glad we finally have found our footing.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, as the resident like video guy, like the smiles that I see after activities and during activities, like that's enough for me to be like, you guys are doing a great job.
Yeah, that is exactly what I think.
Killing it. Like,
yeah,
they're just so happy. And then like last night with Nintendo games, like that was fun.
That was a lot of fun.
The whole time.
Yeah, I sat down at dinner. We planned a little bit before, and then we sat down at dinner, and in the span of 20 minutes, we planned the entire night, and it was wild. And I'm like, I hope this works well. So halfway through, I just kind of did a quick scan. Like if you ask anybody else, it's like, there was like a solid like 15, 20 second pause where like the kids were just kind of like, what's next? But it was like me going, are they enjoying this?
Yeah.
I need to make sure that they're enjoying this. So I was like kind of standing there like looking at everybody before I continued. I'm like, okay, we are enjoying this. Let's go. Yeah. And then I jumped into the next thing. But I was like, okay. I was like, that to me as well. Or even asking, I've been here for 6 years. So all these kids that are now graduating or going into their senior year, I'm like, I knew you as like incoming little freshmen.
Yeah.
And so hearing them go, oh yeah, as the years have gone, like this is like, you like coming to me like, y'all made that one really fun. Yeah. Because most of the time they're here for like a week, and so they're only here, so they get to do each big game like last night's one time, and so it's like, okay, no, that year like y'all killed it this year. Like y'all really executed that, and like we had a ton of fun doing that. And I like finding those people and going, hey, how was it? Yes, no, maybe. If I need to fix something for later on in the summer, like so when we repeat the game, I can make it more fun for the next group, or even something to write down for next year to be like, hey, this one really hit. And those kids, I can see them like light up with it. I'm like, I'm like, that does it. Like that, my job's done. Like I'm like, that was it.
That's what I get paid in. Smiles.
That's it right there. I don't do it for anything but smiles. Come on.
Absolutely. Good stuff here on the Camp Shioka podcast. That was fun. I really enjoyed this time. Like I'm looking forward to doing like the next couple episodes.
Absolutely.
With a handful of older staff and all the new counselors, and just spending the summer with you guys here and out there in the pines. Yep. Are they pines? I don't know.
Pines and Oaks?
Pines and Oaks, out there in the Pines and Oaks. We'll see you guys next time on the Camp Shioka podcast. Bye-bye.